Welcome back, designers, to a new episode of Inside Marketing Design. I'm Charlie, I'm a marketing designer myself, and I've created this series to give an inside look into how marketing design functions at various different tech companies. Something I was curious about, and hopefully if you're listening to this, it's because it's something you're curious about too. In today's episode, we're taking a look inside marketing design at Webflow, which is one of my favorite companies. I'm a very passionate Webflow user, have been for years. They've sponsored my YouTube channel before. My own website is built on Webflow. So I was really excited to sit down and talk to Johnnie Gómez, who is a senior brand designer at Webflow. Now, if you haven't heard of Webflow before, they are a visual development tool. So they're a tool that you can use to build great looking websites without needing to code. The company has about 170 employees at the moment. They do a lot for being a team of that size, let me tell you. And they're about 70% remote. So Johnny, who I'm speaking to today, is based in DC, and he's been on the Webflow team for a little over a year. Something that really stood out to me during my chat with Johnny is actually how little we speak about the design process during this interview. There's a lot of talk about how design functions within the company and everything else that goes into being a brand or marketing designer, and how it's not always being inside a design tool and making a design happen. Johnny was super open in this interview, talking about challenges he's facing as a brand designer, as well as challenges that the brand studio team themselves are facing. So I think you're really going to enjoy this. So without further ado, let's dig in and take a look inside marketing design at Webflow. Well, Johnny, welcome to Inside Marketing Design. I'm really excited to have you here. Let's start off by talking about the team at Webflow. So as I mentioned in my introduction, I'm a big fan of the Webflow team in general. I've done some work with him in the past. And we've had Ryan, who is the, what's his title? Brand design lead, I think, at Webflow.
He's design manager right now.
Design manager, okay. On the show, my YouTube channel before. But I'm excited to talk to you and get more of like a, in the weeds look at how design works there. So tell me about the brand design team at Webflow.
Yeah, sure. So the brand design, which we call brand studio team, I think it's like 6 people right now. It's myself. We have Ryan as a manager, and then you have other like 4 multidisciplinary designers. So we have people that work in the brand studio team, and they work with other teams externally. So for example, we have one person that is in charge of the whole education content. So they work with the Webflow University, and they work for all the with the content that's being launched on the YouTube channel. Then we have somebody that's also more focused on social media and works on assets for that and for product launches. Then we have a person that is in charge of illustrations and branding. And then Camille Esposito and myself, we work as senior brand designers, visual developers, which means, building stuff in Webflow. Pretty much anything that's needed on the marketing side, whether it is, growth experiments, marketing, blog, anything that's being communicated externally.
Cool. So within the team, there's a few people who have very specific specialties in terms of the team or program of work, I guess, that they work on within Webflow. But for you and this other brand designer, it's a bit more general, where you might step into different things and perhaps be at a more higher level stuff like campaigns and things like that.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Cool. And where does this brand studio team fit within the rest of the company? Like, for example, myself as the marketing design lead at ConvertKit, I sit within the marketing team. So my manager is the director of marketing. But what's it like for you?
Brand studio sits in the same table as product designers.
Okay, so it's a design team.
Yeah, and we're trying to to collaborate more and more. I work in a company such as Webflow that has their product and their marketing, which is very different, and we're trying to kind of get those closer together, so that brand can communicate more in the product and vice versa. Since we have 2 different style guides, 2 different guidelines, different colors, different fonts. So we're trying to have a more consistent communication within the product and within the marketing sites. So we're trying to talk more and collaborate more with the product designers. However, marketing being kind of our main fuel to to start new projects and have new projects, we're also constantly talking to marketing knowing that there's a lot of the marketing aspects that we really, I don't know if it's we don't really care about, but we're not really focusing on those.
And what is the main like method of marketing for Webflow? I'm going to guess that it's digital and that a lot of your time is spent building like web pages and things like that. But is there anything else you can tell me about the approach Webflow takes to marketing?
Yeah, so what I find really interesting about it that I haven't really seen a lot of companies put a lot of focus on this is lifecycle.
Yeah, tell me what is lifecycle?
So lifecycle is pretty much the customer experience post acquisition.
Okay.
So it's like the lifespan or the life cycle to do the different stages of the user, whether it is like, like a new onboarding person, or if it is like an experienced designer that design lead for a national, like a multinational agency or something like that. So it's serving the customer pretty much in the most appropriate way at that stage of their cycle.
Right. So it's like stepping a bit further than onboarding, which is something that like I've been a part of at ConvertKit, because it's talking about not only you getting to know the product, but how you use it throughout the whole time that you're a user.
Exactly. And you're not supposed to communicate the same way with with a beginner user that doesn't have any knowledge on HTML and CSS, the same way that you would communicate with a power user that has been using Webflow for 5 years.
Right. Yeah. And so what sort of work do you end up doing marketing to people who are later in the life cycle? What sort of things come in there?
Yeah. So a lot of it comes from content. And I do think that content is, it's people should design based on content, and content should lead pretty much any sort of process. So a lot of it comes from there. Then there are things like, like when you're communicating for different targets, considering Webflow has like a market for freelancers, a market for business owners,
right.
A market for agencies and marketing teams. There's a specific way to talk to each and every one of those markets, whether it comes from like how many technical words you use and your language, to what sort of assets you use. Maybe sometimes showing the UI and the Webflow UI might be a bit overwhelming for somebody that's just starting. And perhaps you want to go for some sort of like illustration, or maybe just make something that's only like, content, like copy and just well-divided hierarchies. I'm a big fan of like minimal design, and I love to work with only type. And of course, like, if there's more things to be included, I obviously will. But I love to create a nice flow using different hierarchies and different colors and different font sizes. So basically, the teams would come to us. We would kind of like debrief what their needs are and work on a brief. We would scope out the work, and we jump into project management tools like Asana, and just like trying to keep everything more organized and more transparent for us and for external stakeholders that might want to just like jump in and see what the status is and how things are going.
Yeah. So when you say external stakeholders in this case, you're meaning people outside the brand studio team, or are you meaning people outside of Webflow?
Exactly. It's usually people outside of the brand studio team that sometimes have they do have feedback. Sometimes they only just want to check and see how everything is doing, and sometimes they're just like the final stage of somebody saying like, hey, this is awesome, let's launch this tomorrow, or I don't know, like next week, for example.
Like giving the approval. Yeah. Let's get into talking about a project at Webflow. So you said that usually it comes that Ryan is the one who decides like who's going to work on what and sort of manages that stream of work. Do briefs normally come from, where do briefs come from in the team? So
briefs usually come from Ryan, Ryan Morrison. We started working on the briefs as a brand studio team, so that we can set expectations for the other teams. We started with a very, let's say, like lenient brief with no specific dates, no turnarounds, nothing too specific. And then Ryan, we talked within the team to see how that goes, if everything's approachable, if what dates sound good. Then we would include like the main stakeholders in that project to see like, does this work for you? What do you think of this? Any comments? And once pretty much that is set, we try to open either a Slack channel so that we're all up to date. Sometimes we even have like two Slack channels for one project, which is the one is like for the people that are going to be talking pretty much on a daily basis, if not like on an hourly basis. And then we have another one that's more like a general, where we would have like maybe somebody from the executive team, somebody from a higher hierarchy, just
Updates
to
and things.
exactly, yeah,
Yep.
just for updates. Then we also kind of like create a new project in Asana. We like to be as specific as possible. Like we have like tasks with subtasks such as I don't know, like check headings.
Right.
And
Oh,
so,
very specific. Yep.
yeah. So it's kind of like our checklist, and and also works as a pre-launch checklist. And it's also like a really good way to organize, who is in charge of what. I feel like Asana is one of those tools like, it only works if everybody uses it. And once everybody's using it, it just turns, like for me, Asana is pretty much the first thing I see every day and the last thing I see every day. Because
Right.
I love to get organized in the morning, and I love to know what I have on my plate for the next day.
Yeah, I feel the same way about Basecamp, which is what we use at ConvertKit, that it's a great tool, but it really only works if everyone is in it and using it in a similar way. Yeah. Okay, so who is the one who, like, say for example, like the launch of a new feature, who decides how you're going to market a new feature and what work the brand design team needs to do about that?
Yeah, so we would have a product marketing management.
Yep.
They would kind of like approach us with like, okay, so this is what's going on. This is what's going to be launched, and this is everything that we need.
Cool.
Those meetings are usually with people, somebody from community who's going to be in charge of like publishing this or the launch in social media. Then you have maybe somebody from engineer. So it gets to the point that our meetings start to get like very diverse. We have meetings that we have somebody from each team that's going to be part of this. And we kind of do like a debrief of like, okay, so this is the problem we're addressing. This is what we're trying to do here. And then we get very accountable of like, okay, so you are going to be charged of this. Okay. And we're not looking like for a verbal confirmation, but just to know that everybody knows what they're supposed to do. And everybody's on track with what's going to happen. And in that meeting, we're like, everybody knows what's expected from each other. Everybody knows how things are going to go. And it's also a nice way to, like, if you want to see like, okay, so I need to know something about the engineering process. Who can I contact? And instead of just like going through everybody in the team or just going through their Slack channel, like, hey, who's in charge of this? You know exactly, who is going to be in charge of this.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's like one representative from each team that's going to be part of a project and is like the go-to person for that.
Exactly. Really and sometimes I don't need to, like, I feel more comfortable maybe just like DMing that person and just like, hey, heads up, this is done. Let me know what you think. Instead of just like putting it in the group for everybody, because I don't need feedback right now from everybody. I need feedback specifically from this person. So it's it's a good way to let people what you're working on and keeping them updated of the progress.
Yeah, and the fact that you have the separate Slack channels as well per project means that you're not overloading the main channels with everything that's going on, and that if people are interested in that project, they can go in there and keep up to date with it.
Yeah, and also like it's very difficult, for like when the company gets to this point, like to have every team using the same app, using like everybody using Asana, for example, it's kind of like unrealistic because like not every team prefers Asana. Maybe other tools are more efficient for other teams. And that's totally understandable. So when it gets to the point that you're like talking with somebody from another team and you want to, you can't just like share like an Asana task and like, hey, what do you think of this? We usually keep an Asana like a project board, and then we usually have like a paper doc or a Google Doc that we can just like also download all the information there. Besides, like the chit chat from Slack channels.
Yeah. Cool. So that's you might have a document that's the overall project plan for everyone in the company to see, but as a brand studio, you use Asana for the nitty gritty and all of the details of a project.
Exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm with you. Cool. So during the design process for something brand design related at Webflow, what tools do you use for design? Do you jump straight into Webflow to design something?
I'm gonna say no, but
Okay.
it's not 100% of the times.
Okay, fair enough.
Because sometimes I have just like some like inspiration streak and just like wait, I'm like I don't know in bed like wait, and when it comes to Webflow, you sort of have this like similar maybe branch as in coding that sometimes like you figure out how to solve an issue while you're doing something else. For example, you're in bed and then I should think, oh wait, but what if I use Flexbox vertical and then I center it and then I jump into Webflow and I just like start experimenting there. Usually it's pen and paper. That's like my to-go thing. It's easy, it's fast. If I make a mistake or something, I'll just go to the next page. I'll do like really like very rough drafts just to have like a clear layout, a clear structure. I kind of like point things with arrows, like this would be for this thing, or I would use an animation here. And that would be pretty much for myself, or perhaps myself and Ryan.
Yep, to discuss the ideas before you move forward to the next phase. Yeah.
Exactly. And,
cool.
Once we talk about it, then I'm probably going to jump into Figma and start doing some higher fidelity, but still not high fidelity, just higher than, just
the pen and paper.
Rough.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And there is where we include other people to give feedback on before we actually jump to design. And then, when I jump to design, when I have I usually work in Figma with a couple pages, and I'm a designer that works on artboards. And then let's say I think of a couple of ways of working on this component. So I kind of duplicate that component along.
I do the
side
exact same thing. Yep.
And then I have then it gets to the point that I'm kind of stitching things together.
Yep. Like this part from Artboard 4 and this part from Artboard 6. Yeah.
Exactly. So that little Frankenstein will go to my new page, which is usually kind of the final page for people to go in Figma and comment there. People that are not designers to just go there. And, Figma has opened the collaboration in a huge way. And we love to use it, with people that feel comfortable with it. They can jump there. If not, we will just use Dropbox paper just to track everything, just to not mark, comments as resolved, and just so people that don't even have Figma installed in the computers or are not willing to use it in their browsers, they can just jump into a Dropbox paper and just comment there.
Right. So you're really flexible with how you receive feedback, and you're wanting to make sure that however the person that you need feedback from, that they're comfortable giving that. That makes sense. How much autonomy or creativity, I suppose, can you have in the design process of things? Is there a very strict design system for the Webflow site? Or, tell me about that.
Yeah, so we have full ownership of our work. And
cool.
That's something that I love about, designing a Webflow. Of course, eventually I'll reach out to Ryan and hey, yay or nay, pretty much. But over this year, I've learned how to ask for feedback for specific things. It's not just hey, what do you think of this? It's more and that goes together with some kind of design crit meetings that we have on Wednesdays that we only talk about, about feedback. Hey, okay, so this is my project. I want to know what do you think of the footer, and I want to know of what do you if you think that the structure is clear and it's it's easy, it's user friendly. It's a good way to have it that way. So at the end, I know that Ryan is the one that decides, and then of course, if there's any external stakeholder that has a strong, let's say influence in the decision, then of course, yes, they will comment. But as far as designing goes, I have full ownership of everything, and yes, I did work on guidelines and kind of style guides to set in place. Most of them are time savers. I have a component sticker sheet in Webflow that I can start from that. We have our kind of an internal guideline of what we should and should not do, which kind of goes, for brand, for components, and also there's also a big part of voice and tone and how we should communicate, how our call to actions should be, how we use our commas, how we use our punctuations.
Very specific.
Very specific, yeah.
We talked before about content and how you said you should always be designing to the content. Where does content come from for a web page for you? Like who's deciding what needs to be said about a feature for a new page, for example?
Yeah, so I love to at least try my best at copy.
Cool.
I'm not a big fan of lorem ipsum. I don't
Same.
really use it.
Yep.
I feel like it's not useful. It's just it's just a blob of text, and
Yeah.
that's pretty much the only thing.
And it's hard for people to critique the structure of the page, and if it's clear, if they don't know what's being talked about where, as well.
Exactly, yeah. So what I do with a couple of product marketing managers is they kind of like do their wireframe of copy. So, they might have like huge paragraphs, and it's really up to me on how I want to show that. Like, maybe I see a paragraph and I'm like, okay, this is just like way too much copy, or it's just going to be a huge block of text. So I'm going to break this in maybe like 3 different parts, and maybe emphasize a couple words, and maybe have some headlines for this. So I do have that kind of like leeway.
I love that you have that autonomy with the copy. Is that something that you've had it throughout your career? Because for me, I have that now at ConvertKit, but I haven't had it always. And I feel like my designs have been much improved since I've been able to have input on the copy myself. I'm just wondering if you feel the same.
Yeah, so at least it gives you that opportunity to just like go for something, and maybe that will spark an idea on whoever is actually checking this. I've used lorem ipsum for a long time, but it's just I always got to the point that I was always changing designs. I was getting to the point that things were never working out the same way, that like from my designs to when it was implemented. I'm a multidisciplinary designer. I'm kind of like a generalist, and trying to get more specific as I'm growing. And now I'm feeling like I have like a strong skill stack, but I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone. I'm trying to public speak. That's like my main thing, and it's mainly communication. Whether it is public speaking, whether it is documenting, or whether it is proposing copy, and maybe seeing some things that I proposed live there in the Webflow side.
Yeah,
it feels good.
Yeah, totally. I love that. What is that then? What you're trying to get more specific on is having the communication skills as part of what you offer as a designer.
Every designer, I feel, should be able to write their own copy, at least propose their own copy, and then have other people weigh in it if it's good to launch or not, or tweak it a bit. But I feel like every designer should eventually should learn how to write copy and documenting.
Yeah.
Also, another huge thing that I think that every designer should thrive for.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's especially important in a remote company as well. Documentation and communication, like written communication, is vital for getting work done on a remote team.
It's pretty much the only way to scale up too. Like the more people join your company, the more need there is for a guideline or for a manual or for something that's there in place for new onboarding people to just like, okay, so how do we do this? Like, here you go. Here's the paper doc, or here's the Google doc, or here. Personally, I had the experience of like doing the same task over and over again in Webflow, and I thought like, if I document this and I get really specific on the documentation, I can open up the game for anybody to do this task. I don't need to be doing this task by myself every single time, and it's gonna take a while to oil that up and have that ready. But once you have it, you just saved yourself some time, and you just saved some time, for other people in the company.
Yeah, I love that you're thinking about that stuff too. Okay, let's say a project is finished at Webflow and it's out there. How do you judge if it was successful or not?
We have a couple of ways. Some being more qualitative, the others being more about like efficiency, about like perhaps even like working on soft skills. So we use tools like Segment, Mixpanel, integrated with Google Analytics, and a big part of the final result is numbers and data. And I totally understand that data does move, does keep the wheels rolling. However, since we have a lot of different teams here, and sometimes it's like how do you relate a 1% increase to what team on who did what?
Yeah.
So we what we usually do is we have some retro sessions, like some retrospectives, that at the end of every project, and usually like maybe like the week after that, we all get together. We all talk as a group on what worked, what maybe didn't work, and at least for myself, I try to be as specific as possible. Like I try to address the situations as much as I can, considering that it's this thing as like when something is like a failure, try to change it into an opportunity.
Yeah, I love that.
For the next project. So you talked about what didn't work well, and then okay, what can we change for next time? And then once we address those things, like okay, any new things that we can do from now on to to not have this issue. I hope that eventually it's like you are oiling it up and oiling it and oiling it and oiling it to eventually make this as efficient as possible, and people know what's expected from them. It's just a really nice way to be self-accountable for something that you might do better in the future, and to just see opportunities where you could just like chip in to make the final outcome better.
So it sounds like you, as the brand studio team, do pay close attention to the data yourselves about how something performed, and you are checking that. Do you have metrics like when you launch a project? Are you trying to like increase the conversion rate by X% or something? Is that sometimes there in the beginning phase too?
Yes, so that's how we work with life cycle and with growth. A lot of it is, we used to have some A/B testing before. Now we're kind of like implementing our own tool to see how that works.
Yep.
Which is also basically like A, B, C, D, E, or as many variables as we can. And I'm just now getting into kind of like the growth world and seeing how smaller percentages make a huge change.
Yeah.
When you talk about a 1%, you're like 1%, that's nothing. And then 1%, it's a meaningful change. People should be celebrating maybe 1%.
Yeah, agreed completely. Tell me more about this testing. How is that working? And are you coming up with ideas of things to test?
Actually, the growth team opened up the game to anybody that wants to propose an idea. So like, hey, what if we have more call to actions in the homepage? Like, okay, so we have already like an Asana project built for this, where we have like a spreadsheet that is like kind of like an experiment creator where you just like fill in the blanks and scripts are created, and this all goes to Asana, and everything is like very integrated in a way that it's just like super easy for me to just like copy and paste a couple of scripts on the designer, and then creating different divs or different elements that are going to be showing or not.
Okay. And
that impacts directly on like, okay, so how many people actually clicked on this? How many people actually clicked on that? So it's, when you have a tool that is aimed for many different types of job roles, it's good to have the possibility to communicate differently, which goes in hand with what I talked about the life cycle.
Yeah.
What I'm aiming for is like to talk the best possible way and the most efficient way to our different markets. And it might get to the point where it's just like changing copy. It might get to the point where it's like, what if we have a dark version of the home? I don't know. Let's see how it goes. There isn't really a limit, and we're just like starting with our own internal thing. So
that's exciting.
It's kind of like it's good to know your impact. It's good to know how you're actually changing. The same way that when I was onboarding on growth, I was like, what if you do something and sales just go to 0%, or you have the power to run an experiment and the experiment is like really bad, and maybe you're like, I don't feel comfortable talking about like numbers because I have no idea, but like, what if I do a change and like we're losing millions of dollars,
right,
and you're like that was only an experiment, like just put it back just the way it was.
Yep, it's high stakes, isn't it?
At high stakes, yeah. But the positive side of that is it's really, really rewarding.
Yeah, when it does work out, and even if it doesn't, you've learned. Now you know not to do that for next time. Yeah, cool.
Exactly.
All right. We talked about performance of projects. What about your performance as the brand designer on the team? How is that handled internally at Webflow? How is your performance measured?
Yeah, so we have TDCs as a short is a team development cycles.
Okay.
It consists of you first looking for peers that you want to be reviewed from. So, and then obviously those people also look for who's going to review them. So you end up basically having to review, let's say, around six people from different teams.
Yep.
And you also have kind of like a self assessment, and then your manager also, like in my case, Ryan, he will give me some like feedback on how I've been working lately, and it can get more like to a personal level. There's some things that like I'm totally vulnerable and like an open book with Ryan. So whenever I'm not feeling well, I will let him know. I appreciate honesty and having this like I feel really comfortable where I work, and I feel really kind of like at home. So I'm not afraid to just speak up my mind to Ryan, and I love having that like complicity with him.
Yeah, that's great.
For my peers, sometimes what I usually do, like I know people that are really grateful for what I do, and they're like, I don't know, I would probably not reach out to those people to get a review because
you don't just want to hear the positive feedback.
I don't want to. Yeah, it's not about like getting like cocky or anything, but I don't want a feedback that's gonna be like, Johnny's amazing, he's so fast. I want some more like solid info.
Yeah,
and,
things
like,
to work
that
on.
I can work on.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So it's always great to have like awesome words about you, and you're like, oh, thank you. Like I it makes me feel proud, and it's kind of like my like little endorphin booster. But I try to reach out for people who are maybe like not tension, but maybe we had a couple of like bumps along the way, and then we went over them, and project went out very smooth. And but I'd like to know how I can be better, how I can be like a better partner for you, how I can be my best self. And by saying that, it's like how the brand studio can work more efficiently with you being community or events, or I don't know, maybe like a side project that started kind of like a 10% project, and then ended up being like a something public and being launched
right
live.
So it sounds like you're really seeking out that like positive critique, like constructive critique. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, and usually those feedbacks are like something good, something bad, and Webflow has like pushes really, really strong for their core behaviors, which is like pretty much how we embody Webflow, how we act, how we talk. A lot of it is based on that too. A lot of the feedback is like, what core behavior do you think Johnny embodies the most? What core behavior do you think he could work on for the next review? It's a good way to just like kind of like set objectives for myself for the next time. So it's like, for example, to get kind of like specific, is like I love to work fast, and I consider myself like a fast worker, and people appreciate that. But sometimes I work too fast.
Okay.
Kind of like leaving people along the way, or like not communicating and keeping people updated the way I should. So maybe I do it like a couple of extra steps, and then I have to do a couple of steps back to and then continue. Which, working fast is good, but it's not always the best way to work.
Right.
And it's something that, like, it's like I technically know it, but then I only realize it and process it when I read it from someone. And like, what? Actually, yeah, maybe I should just like try to be more, more inclusive when I work, when it comes like to speed, of course.
Yeah. So that's something that you're working on now, and like an area of growth for you then. What about for the brand design team, or brand studio team at Webflow? What are some challenges that you're working through at the moment, or like the next things, your areas of improvement that you're looking to work in?
Yeah, so a lot of it, and I think that this would be the answer for growing startups and growing teams, is processes. Is having processes being respected. The same way that I talked to you that I said about like DMs, like sometimes a DM is easier but it's not the process that we should be following. So if somebody tells me like, hey, there's a typo on this page, can you fix it? And I would usually jump in and do it, and that'd be fixed in like, I don't know, 2 minutes, because Webflow. But but is that the best way to actually approach it? Should we maybe like document what changes are being held? And then I'm like, should I ask this person to create a task in Asana for maybe like change, I don't know, ball to bell, and it's just like one letter. Like somebody might take more time actually creating a task,
right, than actually just doing the change.
Than me actually fixing it. Or maybe like even like somebody comes out, like somebody reaches out to me about changing something, and then I tell them like, okay, can you create a task? It's like, yeah, sure, I'll do that tomorrow.
Right.
And I'm like, I can just, if you do it now, I can do it now. But then again, like we have to trust the process. Like I don't want to be that person telling you every single time like, hey, can you create a task for this? But in the end, it's just, everything's documented. Everybody knows who worked on what change. Everybody knows what change was corrected at what time. So it's, it's better for everybody. So our challenges right now is trying to be the best partner for every other team and still be able to, respect processes and having a clear way of communication, like a clear channel of communication within teams, so that people know what they can expect from us, and people know how we work. And it sounds simple, but it takes a while to actually have things working the right way for several teams, considering that the right way for us might not be the right way for another team. So it's like getting used to that and just like adapting to how they want to work. For me, like I want to make Ryan's job easier since he's my manager, and whenever I work with somebody, I want to make their job easier, however I can.
That's been something that we've been going through at ConvertKit as well. I think it's just a company growing, and where it used to be just a couple of people talking to each other, and now there's like, dozens that need to be kept up to date, and you just got to get better with documentation and processes and things, for sure. What about the impact of the brand design team within the company? Like, it sounds like at Webflow, it's pretty dang important.
Yeah. So, as I said before, the brand studio team has full ownership.
Yeah.
When I joined Webflow, something that would come out of my mouth a couple of times would have been, do we want to show this to Vlad or Brian, like, or anybody in the executive team?
Yeah.
And Ryan would say like, no, just let's see, like, let's actually get to that point maybe at the end, but not right now. Like, it's up to us to work on this and find the best solution for this.
Yeah.
And then maybe at the end they will say like, yes, this is awesome, but there's no need to actually include them at that stage of the
and get their feedback midway. Yeah, sounds like you're very trusted, and you obviously do great work, so that's really cool.
Thank you. When I think about Webflow, when I think about what the brand Webflow is, it's way more than its colors. It's way more than its logo. It's way more than the product. I feel like it's the combination of, first, the people that are part of the team. Everywhere, like when I have meetups here in DC, or where I'm doing like portfolio reviews and I mention that I'm a Webflow, people they were like, oh yeah, awesome, Webflow. And I'll be like, woohoo, Webflow. And I've been in meetings where somebody said like, I work at X company. It's like a huge company, and it was like, cool. And then I say Webflow, and it's like, oh, awesome, yeah, we love Webflow. And it's like, wow, like that says a lot about either the product or just like Webflow, like in general.
Absolutely.
And besides that, the customer support team are some of the nicest people I've ever met. Our CEO is one of the most like outspoken people, and more like, I've never shared a vision more with anybody pretty much than what I should share with Vlad. And just the product itself, and just like the our efforts on democratizing web development for anybody to create a website is just like, I feel like the brand is way more than Brand Studio. I can do, and we can do as much as we can from our side and make it as pretty as possible. But our brand is so much more than what we produce.
I love that, Johnny. I feel like that is the perfect point to end on. Like, you just summed up how I feel about the Webflow brand as someone who has that reaction when I meet someone who works at Webflow. It's all of those things. It's not just the product, it's the people, it's the company, and all the things. So thank you for sharing with us how it all works there. So Johnny, where can people go to find out more about you online, or where can people connect with you?
So you can find me on Twitter at callmejohnny. A lot of people write Johnny in very different ways. Just in case, it's Johnnnie. You can also check my profile on Webflow, which is webflow.com/itsjohnny. Johnny spelled the same way. All my projects are all clonable. They're all open for anybody to just clone and start working, or just see how things are going. I'm also open for portfolio reviews, or just, like any sort of like career advice, or any sort of like, just geek about design. Just I'm very friendly, so feel free to reach out to me on Twitter and we can just get that going.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people interested in that. I get asked to do portfolio review videos all the time. So there we go, people. Contact Johnny and he'll give you some feedback. Awesome. Thanks for being here, Johnny.
Thank you very much for having me here, Charlie. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to me if you wanted to head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review for it. That really helps us get the show out there. This is a show that, in case you didn't know, is available in both video and audio form. You can watch the videos on my YouTube channel, Charlie Marie TV, and subscribe there to be notified whenever a new one goes live. Or you can find the audio version as a podcast in whichever podcasting app you use. Just search for Inside Marketing Design. I'd love to hear what parts of this episode stood out to you. What takeaways did you have from this conversation with Johnny? What was interesting to you? You can tweet them to me at Charlie Prangley, or tag me on Instagram under the same handle. I'd love to hear about it. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.